So let's dive in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to put up your three, the ones you picked. And this is the order you gave them to me in, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Correct?
Yes.
Sure. So, there you go. Gangs of New York, which I watched as soon as you told me. Pulp Fiction, which I saw in the theater. And Avatar, which I just watched for the first time less than an hour ago.
Stop it. Have you been living under a rock, sir?
No, that rock was also to keep me from the blast of the what's it called? I can't come up with it. I'm running on weird. I had a bunch of Chips Ahoy and a headache.
I'm high on Chips Ahoy.
I missed it in the theater, and then
hype in a way.
Well, no, I caught the hype. I caught the hype full on, and was actually really excited to see it. Yeah, and then other things took over, such as like my friends who also love movies were like, they all described the same experience of having it, which is very different than what our circle of friends described when they saw it. And when I watched it, I completely understood both points of views.
Cool. Yeah, I do too. I get it too.
So you know what? We're already talking about it. Let's talk about it.
Let's start.
There, you see that? Yeah. I switched it to the thing.
So very high tech.
You love it, right? I love it. I love it a bunch. So you tell me why it's one of your favorite movies.
I saw it at the movies, and 3D? I don't even remember.
3D IMAX, or did you see it 2D?
Oh, good question. I feel like I saw it at least once in 3D, but it might not have been the first time that I saw it.
Okay.
The first time I saw it might have just been in standard, cinema styles.
But you were in a theater where you couldn't just leave or change the channel.
Exactly. I was strapped in for the ride. So I think it was just one of those movies that in some ways had the elements of magic that I knew actually existed in the world.
Right.
And even though it was very Hollywood, at the time I loved Sam Worthington as an actor. I loved Sigourney Weaver as an actor.
Like there were certain notes.
Yeah, there were certain
hitting all the things I loved about it, actually.
Yeah. And there were certain actors in it that draw me in. I mean, a movie for me, it needs to have good actors. Doesn't matter how good the script is for me. If it's not an actor that I almost connect with in a way, it doesn't work so much. Yeah. It's weird like that, actually. But anyway, so...
It's not that weird. It's actually not that weird.
Okay, good.
It's a thing called movies where you need good actors.
Okay, good. So, yeah, like it was that element that there was that part where the actors really, for me, played their roles very well.
Yes, they did.
Like they were casted very well. Mm-hmm. But then there were elements to it where you overlooked all the Hollywood and the drama and the blah, blah, blah that really were very true to me about the magic that exists in the world. So
absolutely.
That's what drew me in. And there were bits of it where I was like, boring, or shut the fuck up and hurry up, or like fast forward this bit. but I think the parts, because everyone loves a little bit of drama, but then when it starts to drag out a bit, you're like, are we seriously still talking about this? Yeah, but the parts of it that were really, like the connection with the animals and the connection with the environment and nature. The fact that I liked the part about them learning the culture as well. Like these people went in and really made themselves these avatars to learn about the people that they were going in. And there was something about that where I was like, like that's fucking cool to dedicate also yourself to like changing completely to learn the cultures and the language, and like they really gave up everything about themselves in order to become these people. And in the end, they truly became them. And it was like, as a child, that would be a dream for me to leave the world I was in and join this magical world where you got to ride dragons and these crazy looking horses and there were these trees that you talked to. Like it was like, I'd be out of here. I'd be like, see you later. I'm off to that like that adventure. So that was the part of it, I guess, that I really loved, and I still do when I watch that movie. So, oh, your internet died. Hold, please. We need some elevator music. I don't know any elevator music, so. And I mean, I can keep talking too. I'm trying to think what else about Avatar. Well, I have a good friend of mine, Mark Kerr, whom I've known for quite a few years now, and he hadn't seen it either until we were good friends. And I was talking about the movie Avatar, and he's like, "Oh, I've never seen that movie." And I was like, "Look out the diary, cancel everything," and we watched it on my big screen TV, and he was blown away as well. And I think that's the other thing about movies is also it's great watching them alone. And when you can watch them with someone where you almost go on that journey with them in a way, or especially if you've seen a movie and then you get to show it to someone and give them, like, you don't really say anything about the movie. Like, I didn't really tell Mark much about it. And we just sat there and watched it together. And I remember after the movie ended, he turned to me and was like, "That is seriously, like, has just changed my whole life." Like, it gave him this whole new perspective on whatever it was for him. So I think the other cool thing about each of these movies that I've chosen is also that part of it, like what it's been for me, but also the times that I've watched them with other people and the shared experience with them as well. So yeah, and I love that about a movie, when you watch it and then you can tell someone about it and then they watch it and they're like, "I know exactly what you're talking about," which I think, Mikey, was what you were saying with this movie, is you got the perspective of like a lot of our circle of friends. I'm just letting you know now that I'm still talking. The perspective of, like, from our side of friends was one thing, and then you had other friends that had like this whole other thing as well, like seeing like how a movie can really change and impact people in a positive or a negative way, really, or somewhere in between that. Like, there's an element of magic to when a movie is really good or maybe really bad that you don't really get anywhere else. Like, in a book, it's very similar but also very different. And I wanted to say as well, with picking these three movies, it's so tough. Like, whenever someone says to me, like, "What's your favorite food?" or "What's your favorite movie?" or "What's your favorite music?" I'm like, that's like, it feels like you're torturing me right now, basically. So, oh, it says it's still recording.
So can we pick up from where we left off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we start again, or do we?
I actually have I have what we had,
Cool.
which really bummed me out when we kicked off, was like, you just started like really digging into like why you dig it.
Uh-huh.
And I started getting like this tingly sensation that I get right here, that whenever something's cooking and something's working and something's like, my body's like, "Ooh, this feels good. This feels good. This feels good." And then it cut out. And I was like, "Oh, no." So, you were talking about, we were talking about Avatar and the magic that is possible. And like, can you keep going on that?
Yeah, for sure.
Please.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So I don't even remember exactly what I was saying, but I think like the real pull for Avatar as well was how much it reminded me also of what I knew as a child, in a way. Like, yeah, as a kid, I always had this like I guess I thought like a fantasy movie in a way. Like, I believed in like things could fly and that there was magic, and like you have that way, like that. You don't have the belief systems that you have when you get a little bit older and things stop being so sort of whimsical and magical. And
Mhm.
I guess the reason I love movies like that is because there was definitely a time in my life where I thought that was totally possible. Like it was
Yeah.
possible to go to another planet and become this blue avatar and go and meet the natives and ride flying things and connect to them with your tail. And it's like, so it kind of like reminds you of that, like a time in your life also where
Ooh.
magic was really just everywhere, like
Yeah.
believable and but not even believable. It was more like part of who you are in a way. Like it's not even like you had to think about it. It was just how it was. Like, yeah. So and as I was saying before, as I was saying before as well, I loved how they casted the movie. I loved the characters and how they played the roles.
Mhm.
And I remember one scene in particular that I really liked that I just remembered when we started talking, which was when Sam Worthington, I can't even remember his character's name, but when he first
It
becomes his,
is. Hold on, I'll look it up because
thank you.
Jake Sully.
Jake, yes.
Yeah.
When Jake first becomes an avatar, and part of his training is they were playing basketball.
Oh,
So
yeah, like he runs out in the yard and they're actually just
yeah,
shooting hoops.
yeah, and like that's part of their like getting used to your body kind of thing. And he was like, so he started and like sat up in the room he was in and was like, okay. And they're like, take it slow, take it slow. And he just basically like busted out of all
Okay.
the equipment,
Ran
went
out
out
the door.
in his hospital gown thing still, and then they were shooting hoops. And like the way he just like embraced this new like body that he had and really just was willing to just dive in and go for it. And even when he went out into the forest and then he was by himself and there were all these things trying to kill him, and he just really stepped into being this magic and doing it, and wouldn't let anyone stop him as well. And that was always something that I loved in that movie too. Like,
Ooh.
yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
And then obviously there's like the romantic side of things where he meets the girl and they fall in love.
There's that moment where their faces are really close when he's working on the bow and arrow move, and then
Yep.
yeah, and that's one of the things that I actually really dug about the. And it's funny because like now that I've had a couple of days to kind of digest it even more. I think it's that part of me that like, well, okay, we already went over that like the part of me that's like, okay, I really like movies. So like, I'm when Martin Scorsese came out and was like, superhero movies aren't cinema. And everyone's like, oh, how could you say that? And I was like, I kind of get what he's saying. I'm not. And then he was like, I'm not saying they're bad movies. And my problem with, and it's funny, the more I think about the only real problem I have with the movie is that even in Aliens, like old school Sigourney Weaver, James Cameron.
Yeah, I love that movie. Those movies.
Good. Even the alien mom, the queen alien, had a dimension to her. Like she was trying to save her babies, and it basically was Sigourney Weaver versus the mom alien fighting for the protection of their child. So like, and then there's another thing that made me laugh about Sam Worthington's performance, which made me love it, was that in his Unabomber thing he did, there were a couple times where his Aussie accent just slipped out. And I was watching, I was watching Avatar. And I was like, okay, I'm getting this. And then I think he was chasing Homegirl. Zoe Saldana's character, and it just slipped out.
Yeah.
It slipped out pretty heavy, and I just started being like, "Yeah, what's up? I love Australia." It's so stupid, but just that whole like, I was thinking about this, and this is kind of why like I actually way get it more than I ever thought I would, which is the it's like the running joke for people, because again, I was one of them for a while. For people who didn't get Avatar, was like, okay, it's basically Pocahontas with special effects. Yeah. But The Matrix, like this movie actually compares very heavily with The Matrix in the sense of like, okay, here's the idea. And the idea of The Matrix is what the reality that we see in front of us actually isn't reality. It's something else entirely. And when you get that and you break that, you actually have lack of a better term, access to an entirely different magic, and you can
Yep.
bend the rules and whatnot.
Yep.
However, in like the time we live, in just today, it's like, or not even today, just like in modern times, it's sort of like you actually need science fiction, and you need it to go like 2,000 years into the future or wherever that is, to be like, okay, we've actually created a technology that allows you to experience this. And like you
Mhm.
said, that was one of the funniest things about that one scene where he's getting used to his body. I was yelling at the TV because that's how I watch movies. It's like, sit
Yeah.
down, calm down. And then I thought about it, like, or this is a guy who didn't have use of his legs,
Yeah.
clearly like misses it,
Yeah.
and now he's got this whole new body. And like just seeing him outside running, that's what I went from, like, oh come on
Yeah.
man, let the scientists do their gig, to like,
Yeah.
oh he's running, oh my
Yeah.
god, he's running. And
Yeah.
like, when he stops and he slides, and you can, and the slow motion of, you can see the dirt hit, like the way he's even, you could feel him feeling the dirt.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really
Yep.
dug that. And I love how you're right, like that he, I mean, it was, it's that hero's journey thing that I like, where he goes, he's okay, I'm Mr. Marine guy. And
Yeah.
then like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yes sir, no sir. And then as he actually is living, he's like, wait a second, like this is fucked.
Yeah.
Very Dances with Wolvesy, and
Yep.
which is a movie I also have not seen. So when someone else
Oh,
names it, I'm going to enjoy watching that.
good. That is a good movie too,
Is it
actually.
really?
Yeah.
I'm a big Kevin Costner fan. I could watch him limp around and for like 2 hours and be manly and sexy.
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on. So
Cool.
this next one you mentioned, I really really want to talk about this with you. So why Gangs of New York?
Well, there's such a rawness to it. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, he's one of my all-time most favorite actors. But there's a violence and a rawness to it that I think is created so well in this movie. Like, it's one of those movies where you watch it and you're there. Like, it's the dirt and the grit and like everything in it, where you watch it and you're like, I feel like I've lived in this era before. Like, it's almost like just watching a piece of your own history or something. Like, to me, it was like, okay, this is so familiar to me.
Yeah.
And like, when I can watch a movie and there's that element of like, especially when it's a movie like this that was obviously based, well before our lifetime, it's like, when it transports me to that time and I'm like so there, like it's like the Peaky Blinders TV series is another one that really does that for me. And I watch that and I'm like just there with all of the accents and all of the smells, and it's like you can almost like smell and hear and taste everything that's on the screen. Yeah. And I think like, because it's a brutal movie and it's very violent, but when it's made in that way, it's so like, it's such a contribution to the story, and it's so easy to watch. Like, you don't sort of like, some gory, horrible movies, you're like, hiding. But this one, you just like basically just eyes wide open and glued to the screen. Yeah. And just like, I guess it has those elements of, and I mean, I use the word romance, even though I don't know what that is, but there's like this element in these movies where it's not necessarily the man and woman thing either. It's like this, I don't know, like this timeless thing, especially when it's about something being created. Like, this was like when an era when there was like such turmoil because these people were in like a foreign country and people were trying to find, what's my role here? What the fuck am I doing? Like figuring things out. And yeah, there's such a romance to that. Like, it's like this tiny, like just a peep into history, but to imagine having a lifetime then, like that this was my life between this year and this year, like, yeah.
I'm just gonna keep making that noise. Well, like for as like I watched Hamilton on July 4th, and I was like, because I just wanted to. I'd seen the play and I'd seen the musical in person, and watching Gangs of New York. There's that, that opening is so incredible, and that you go through like the whole, like that whole thing is a movie,
Yeah.
where okay, these gangs are getting together, everyone's
Yeah.
got accents, it's as
Yeah.
old school, we're clearly somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then when at the end when the camera pulls back and it's the island of Manhattan and you're like, oh, this is what we're
Yeah.
doing. And
Yeah.
um, I mean, obviously it's the name of the movie, so you should get that. But that period in American history where it's like the Civil War is just starting, and now they're just rounding up soldiers. And then the part that I didn't see coming, which was really weird and really enjoyable, was like, okay, we're buddying up with Bill the Butcher. Like
Yep.
the suits were butting up with them because it was like, look, just herd votes.
Yeah.
Like we're basically trying to manipulate the voting system so we can get what we want.
Yeah.
Oh, and then that dirtiness, it made me laugh so hard because I was like watching it, like, oh, this is great. I think I need to take a shower. like I need to wash my hands.
Right?
Like this
with
is
all the meat just being cut up in like warm rooms of like.
and it was funny because when I watched it, when you first told me about your movies, that was like one of the first things. I was like, oh, I haven't seen Gangs in New York, and I'm a huge Scorsese fan, so I was like, how can I miss that? Like, all those meat scenes made me so hungry. That's just a me and meat. Like, I just love it so much, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. So, was there any? I mean, in terms of characters, like, was there a character that you kind of were like, it's kind of my jam?
Well, it's kind of funny in movies like that. It's hard to pick because, like you were saying in like in Avatar, and where you watch those movies and you try and almost like find common ground with and even though Daniel Day-Lewis's character, the butcher, was like an evil person, like he still had such pull, like such.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, like with how they cast these roles, like he, as an actor, he's just phenomenal. Like he's you just believe that that's who you're watching, is this character on the screen. And so it's hard not to, it's hard for me when someone is that like just enveloped in a character to not totally go along with the whole thing.
Yeah.
So his role still stands out. Like when I look at the movie, I remember him the most. Yeah.
Well, because I remember when I was watching it, and especially in with all the actors I know and the way we talk about actors, it's like he's legendarily like this crazy person, supposedly. Like, oh, he's such a method actor. But then I started researching it even more, and it was like, even people who were like, oh yeah, he stays in character the whole time, they were more like, but he's well aware there's a movie. It's not like he suddenly is Abraham Lincoln for like 8 months and then forgets that he's Abraham Lincoln. Like, he just stays in the voice and stays in the character's mindset the whole time, so that he even says it. He's like, I'm behaving like this. I am this other person so much that when the camera's rolling, instinctual things will happen that are just coming from this person's point of view. I mean, that scene where he's like, the whole time you're like, oh, he's gonna kill him. Leo's gonna kill him. There's gonna be a thing. Here he goes. He's gonna avenge his father. But then that's what killed me. That's what I loved about the movie, was that you were like, oh wait, he's weirdly become his father figure, and there's this love between them, and he actually loves him like a son. And it's, oh wait, what am I doing? Like, I'm supposed to hate that guy because he's brutal and he's awful and he's a monster, but he's not at all.
And I think that's like of those times as well, like where survival became so, like, it's so different to now. Like what you had to do to mark out your whatever, your lot in life was like so different. Like you either chose to be that, or you kind of got chewed up in all of the
even at the high levels of society, high society, there still was there was a brutality in it. Okay, sorry, I just even thinking about just like how that reflects how you even said it like, because right now it definitely feels like that. I mean, it's like, oh, we're doing something else.
Yeah.
And there's this, and it's interesting. I was thinking about it today because there's a lot going on.
Hmm.
There's a lot going on here, and
Hmm.
that level of kind of commitment to the bit, lack of a better term,
Yep.
like, oh, am I actually going to commit to being in this, to actually being in this new reality of possibilities, or am I going to keep a foot in the other one? Because I've actually this week I've never felt. I mean, after the after the ESB class, I was
Yep.
like, okay, cool, new reality, and then the Monday through Friday was like, oh wow, this
Hmm.
old reality is really telling me I'm wrong if I don't, stay in it.
Yep.
And that level of commitment to like, wait a second, am I really going to commit to like what's true for me and
Yep.
this new world that I'm living in?
Yep.
Um, so I don't know. I just think that came
Yeah.
up with what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And it's really where like those times, like, and I guess that's another thing about the movie. It captured like one of those times where it was a real, like a turning point, like a
Mhm.
time when shit had a lot of big change going on. And it is
Yeah.
like, it was that, whatever, dramatization of that. Like, what are you going to choose? Are you going to
Yeah.
choose this or are you going to choose this? And even though now it's very different, it's also like, we're at that crossroads in a way, and for different people that looks like a very different crossroads probably than it does to us. But for
Yeah.
people like in this same place choosing what we're choosing, it's like, are you going to sink or are you going to swim in a way? It's like,
Yeah.
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 And there's a brutality to that too. Like, even though it's not really, but there's still this thing of like, like, yeah, it's very, very confrontational in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird
Yeah.
because the confrontation that I'm experiencing now is me.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I see it in other people and the way that I'm dealing with other people. And like I've made some choices in the last week and a half or so that are really like, wow, that is something I'm not even sure I would have ever done before. But
Yep.
I like I don't know if I mentioned this. Like of course I didn't mention this because I don't know if it happened. Anyway,
When we last spoke, yeah.
yeah, I know, right? Uh I mean, I'll probably cut this part out, but my sister, who's kind of been like dominating the family with her bipolarness and her assholeness and like
Hmm.
her intelligence, because she's the smartest person we all know, but she'll like dominate with her shit. Um, she was like, okay, I'm leaving LA and I'm moving back to Baltimore, and I was like, okay, well, even though I have my point of view of COVID, you're driving across the country, and I know how my body is with COVID, but I
Yeah.
also know that my parents' body with COVID's a different thing. So hey, can you please be careful?
Yeah.
Like you're moving back to Baltimore, you're staying at a friend's house for 3 weeks. Can you just be cool? And she was like,
Hmm.
oh, and she was totally gaslighting me. She's like, is something wrong going on in your life? You can always talk to me. And I was like, whoa, that was a good move. No, nothing's wrong. I just want you to be careful. And then the next message I get from my older sister is like, she's at mom and dad's house like right now. And I was like, hmm. And then this intense potency came up. And then it was so funny because I was like, I thought I was being present with it, but I was totally trying to push it away and be cool.
Yeah.
And luckily I called I don't know if you ever met her, Maria Gregori. She's here in
Uh,
LA.
maybe.
I don't know if you ever met her, but I called her and she was awesome. She's like, what if you allowed yourself to actually be the rage?
Yeah.
I mean, not the rage, but this anger. Like, what if you
Yeah.
actually allowed yourself to be it right now? And
Yeah.
what if you unleashed on her, like for
Yeah.
real, unleashed on her? And I did, and it was, it's so funny. It was, now that you mentioned it, it was kind of Bill the Butchery.
Yeah.
It was straight up like me
Yep.
and my dudes with our I forgot if they were red or blue, and
Yeah.
we're just gonna chop we're just gonna
Yep.
cut you.
You're gonna die,
You're going
basically. You're gonna die.
that, and then to that degree, there is that like that's at least that's what I see what's going on right now is like um yeah, like whatever it is you're creating and whatever you're choosing to create, it's like, are you in or not
Yeah.
on your own life? Like, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Like, choose whatever you choose. I'm not going to be all like,
Yeah.
whether that's
Exactly.
my gig or not, but
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And it's also like exactly what you were saying, where you would use like where all of these opportunities are presenting themselves, where you have the option, the choice to choose what you would usually choose, like you were saying, just play it cool, blah blah blah,
yeah,
and do that again and again and again, or look at it and be like, actually, like, is this one of those moments where it's really time to choose something different?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And in a time of that much turmoil, like, I mean, you know, it was so interesting, like the way they were drafting people to be in the war. I mean, it was funny as a Filipino kid learning American history, and it was like, oh yeah, people were so racist towards the Irish,
Yeah.
and I was like, but they're white. Like white people are just angry at white people, like, and that's when I first was looking at it, like, oh, we just want to be angry at each other
Yep.
for some reason,
Yep.
like
Yep.
any way to separate and
Yep.
like feel more powerful, people are just going
Hmm.
to choose that. Oh, okay, whatever.
Yep.
So all right, let's talk about Pulp Fiction.
Yay!
This excited me greatly that you mentioned this, because this is totally in my top 10
Cool.
of and there's so many different reasons to like this movie.
Right.
So why is it one of your favorites?
Well, I think it was the first Quentin Tarantino film I ever saw.
Yeah, it was
And
mine too. It was
yeah.
only a second one. It was only a second movie.
Oh, okay, good. Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense then.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it, and the first thing I noticed was how different the movie was made. Like the way that he chopped it
Ooh.
up, and like I'd never seen a movie made that way before. So that was the first thing that really pulled me in, because it made you like really question what was going on or what was going to happen next, and then trying to piece things together. Were they in the past? Like, had this happened? And like, he's such a clever filmmaker in that way, because you've got a lot going on, and then you've got trying to kind of piece together how the story's playing out and what
Mhm.
bit's happening when and all that sort of stuff. Again, also the way that it's casted too. I love how much he loves working with Uma Thurman, because
Yeah.
then she pops up in more of his movies, and you can tell. I don't know, when a director has that relationship with one of the actors, that they bring something out in them, or they character them, or they do something. I don't really know what goes on, but the character almost, yeah, has a life force of its own.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Ooh.
her character was really, really enjoyable for me in that movie, because she's just this sexy, sophisticated woman that does a lot of drugs and is kind of fucked up, but is also like just, yeah.
Sure.
Like, at the time I was like, I want to be her, basically. Like, that was,
Yeah.
I was going into that stage of my life where
Right.
drugs were becoming a thing, and
Mhm.
like there was such a draw to her character, that for me at the time, that I was like, wow, this is like, it was, I guess, to describe that movie at the time, it was super cool. Like, it was one of those
Oh
movies
yeah.
where you're like, just from the soundtrack to the way he films it, with that really sort of, I don't know, like it's a bit grainy, it's a bit gritty. All of the, like, whatever, the cars, the scenery, like everything just screams coolness. Like, it's just so
Yeah.
fucking cool. You're like,
Mhm.
you just feel